Howdo. You catch me finishing off from the live episode, and we've finally got to where we wanted to be with a very nice shaped neck, not final sanded or anything of the sort, but we now need to insert this into a guitar body. Now, many of you might have done neck pockets before, usually with templates, because you've got a standard neck, a standard hole needed, and you put the two together using a big fat router. But what if you have a custom neck, and especially one with a slightly different end on it? That's not going to work, is it? So here's a quick video on how I do custom neck pockets, predominantly by hand. The first thing is just to clamp the neck onto the body, making sure that you've got the correct scale length between your nut at one end and the bridge that you've marked off on the other end. So we've got a 34-inch scale running along here. I've then put a ruler either side so that as I come through, I can work with my center line that I have on my neck. Just about see there, matches up with the center line on my body, and as we work our way through here, the center finding ruler tells me that all is equal, the neck is in the correct position. Now, as you can see, I always like to put my original design and markings from the paper directly onto the body so that everything's in the correct place all the time. This makes marking off this area even easier. So what I'm going to do now is actually scribe around the edge with a knife to cut that paper off, and it'll also scribe a line into the wood as well, but only very, very gently to begin with. And once you've marked up, we can very carefully take that knife away. We can see where the cuts have been in the paper, and we're really hoping there's a nice mark underneath that as well. So then we should be able to peel this off. Just stuck on with glue sticks, and there is our neck pocket. Looks a little massive, doesn't it? But that's quite often the case with basses, as we have the top of the body lean over heavily towards that 12th fret for balancing purposes. I'm sure you've seen basses where instead of a top horn, it actually just comes round completely onto the neck and is completely attached all the way through. And now comes the fun bit. Here we get to use some chisels, haha! So what I'm going to do at first is actually overemphasize the scratch marking that I've got in here. And we can do that all the way around. The end bit's the easy bit, because you just chip a little bit, not going right the way into that mark, literally just a little chip like this. Exactly the same way that a carpenter would make a scribe line for a joint. And then we can just chip that off, look. So by chipping that top coat off, it finalises that line that we cut with the knife. Now along the grain we can do a similar kind of thing. Just kind of running that chisel along the edge, just digging into the corner a little bit, and that should pull up again where that knife line's been. So from this marking off point, it really is just a case now of removing the wood within those walls. Obviously we need to go down to the correct depth as well, and whatever tool you have is the right one to use. So of course the obvious solution would be to just grab a great big power router and work your way through, cutting through that incrementally, one section at a time, keeping away from the edges. Really simple, really quick, really efficient. However, I don't like them, so I'm going to put it away. The whole reason I have a workshop is because I enjoy woodworking. So if you don't enjoy the tool that you've got, as efficient as it might be, if you're doing it to enjoy the process, use the tools you enjoy using. Which for me is tools like these and these. Really gentle cuts starting at this end section, tapping it lightly down, chiseling in, tapping it down, chiseling in. The deeper you go, the more adventurous you can be with your hits. So we can see at this end, I've got down and I'm getting close to that 20mm depth. I've got a couple of millimeters left, which is absolutely lovely. So now I'm just going to make sure I don't interrupt this end section and just keep working the chisel all the way through, not going down deeper than that. And there's the chiseling done. Didn't take that long. Now a lot of people doing that would be tempted to use a drill to remove most of that waste, and that's a good technique, and it gives you a flat, even base to work down to as well. If you can drill down exactly the depth that you want, it gives you something to aim for. I was actually incredibly fortunate here in that there's this little joint piece from the original wood that runs just under 20 mil, so I could work down to that level all the way through. But to be honest, you could just as easily keep an eye on how deep you're going through that section there. Next up is the use of a router plane. Now if you don't have a router plane, may I recommend making one? Link in the description for one of those videos. So once we have a nice flat bottom, all we need to do now is work on these edges. So you can see all the time I've been keeping away from those nice straight scribed lines that we did earlier on. A really good way to clean up that edge is just to clamp down a nice straight edged piece of wood. In this case I've got an offcut of the oak that we originally used, and just line that up so it's nice and neat along that scribe line that we put earlier on. Now with this in place, I can see that I've actually got quite a thick bit to take off at first, so I'm not even going to go up against this to begin with. I'm just going to start taking chunks off, keeping an eye on which way the grain wants to run. So again, I can't dig down and it's split into the body. It's running fairly straight at the moment. You see how simple that is with a relatively sharp chisel, especially on this pitch pine that wants to split. It's just making sure it splits how you want it to. So then you can hold the chisel up against that flat piece and really slowly just pare down for that final wall. And then obviously do the same on the opposite side. Oh, I do enjoy a nice slice. So let's try a first fit to see if it fits. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm kind of hoping that if anything, it's a little bit too snug. Well, that is going in. It is snug, for sure. Yeah. All the way down, almost. Not bad for a first fitment. So let's give it a look and see what we've got. It's not going quite all the way down, which means the bottom corners of the channel will need tidying up. And here, it's not bad, but you can see there, the shape isn't quite perfect on that section there. So that would be the first thing for me to fix. If I think it's a bit tight, I'm not going to take edges off because that's too much like hard work and going too far. The best way with any guitar pocket is just to take a little bit off this edge, because the taper will mean it moves backwards a fraction and will slot in easier. So that's going to be one of my first fixes. And that, my good friends, is how we make a custom neck pocket. Now, of course, we could go ahead and glue that in, but I'm not going to yet because we've got loads of work to do on the body. So make sure you watch this playlist to catch up on the whole build so far. Links in descriptions for things like the router plane. Go make yourself one of those, they're absolutely brilliant. And until then, I shall see you next week. Toodle pips, God bless.